All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming tonight. This is the March 11th, 2019 Westminster City Council meeting, and I would ask you please to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. There are flags in both the front and the back. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Ms. Parker, would you take the roll, please?
Atchison.
Here.
DeMott. Haney.
Here.
Mankey. Here. Seitz. Scully. Here. Bowles.
Here. Council, this time I'd like to move a motion to excuse Councilors DeMott and Seitz as they are attending the National League of Cities representing the City of Westminster.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is made. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, they are both excused for tonight. Next item on the agenda is item 3 is consideration of the minutes of the preceding meeting of February the 25th. Ms. Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the City Council approve the minutes of the regular meeting of February 25th, 2019 as presented.
Ms. Mankey.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is carried. The minutes are accepted. Are there any employees or employee families in the audience? Okay, good. I was worried. This next part is for you. So at this time, I'd like to ask Councilor Mankey, if you would, please, and come talk to us about our 20-year employees. Absolutely.
Oversees the adult and youth art classes, which are held at various city facilities and the pottery studio located at the City Parks Recreation Center. She supervises art staff and instructors, manages the program budget, and throughout the past 20 years has continually improved class offerings and programs, reflecting trends while maintaining high standards of quality instruction. She champions the arts as an important part of wellness and realizes its therapeutic value in people's lives. During her tenure, Melinda also worked on a number of special projects, including membership on the Parks, Recreation, and Libraries Department's Strategic Planning Committee,
that developed department mission statement, supported many parks, recreation, and library department special events, as well as coordinated art program events like the Chili Bowl Luncheon and pottery sales. Linda represented the city on the North Metro Arts Alliance Board of Directors for several years. She has scheduled art shows in the City Hall lobby and coordinated various other city-sponsored art shows. She was also a member of the selection committee for 2 of the Westminster Station public art installations. Linda grew up in rural Colorado and loves the outdoors. She enjoys gardening, biking, lifelong learning, travel, and most of all, her family. She has been married 30 years and has 2 adult sons, of whom she considers her best work. Thank you so much for your service. For Melinda, we have a plaque. It reads, "This award is presented with gratitude and appreciation for your outstanding contribution to the City of Westminster through your commitment of 20 years of dedicated service. Presented on behalf of the Mayor and City Council on this 11th day of March, 2019. As well as thank you so much. Thank you so much for all your
Thank you very much. Kathy Gibb. By yourself. Somebody like to come up and stand with Kathy? There you go. Come on up. Well, Kathy, first of all, this is the plaque with a 25-year piano, almost, but I know that's all you do, not really here anymore. This is getting better all the time. Well, Kathy Gibb was a librarian too and started with the city in 1994. During her 23 years as a fiction selector, she built a collection to mirror the public's needs and to reflect changing technologies, from tape to CDs to downloadable. Achievements include creating book bags, coordinating the personal librarian service, and sharing readers' advisory expertise with the public. She has also attended Front Range Community College classes and library conferences. She is proud to be supportive of her co-workers, coordinate large events with community partners, and help library customers get the perfect book into their hands. In her spare time, Kathy reads, hikes, skis, and travels with her husband. She also volunteers at the Colorado Therapeutic Writing Center. Congratulations and thank you very much. Now, there's a little bit different. You'll see. This is why Kathy really came tonight. So for every year of service that we do for those who have been here for 25 years, it's a $100 piece, and we have a check for Kathy for $2,500 tonight for her service for 25 years. Thank you, Kathy. Can you get them in? Thanks for the writing. How about Laura Rutledge? Laura. Come on, Greg. So now here comes the hard part. You got to introduce them all.
My husband Louis. My 5 grandkids. My daughters. And my son-in-law.
Okay, thank you for coming tonight. You just got to stand over here. We're going to talk to you over here. I want to ask your husband to hold this for you. All right, this is your plaque and a pin for 25 years of service. That's the most expensive thing you get to hold tonight. Lori Rutledge started working for the city as a substitute guest relations clerk at the Swim and Fitness Center in February of 1994. She became a regular part-time employee, then was promoted to a part-time facility assistant and worked at Countryside Rec Center. July 2000, Lori was promoted to a facility assistant position at Westview Rec Center. Lori is currently a facility assistant at the City Park Complex. Throughout her years of service for the city, she has received several honors and awards. Lori was a community-oriented governance team member. She also received two Teams in Action Awards, one in 2006 for the Community Open House Team for Fire Station 5, in 2007 for the teamwork involved in developing a rental marketing program. She's fine. Maybe I spoke too soon. In 2007, Lori was presented with several honors for assisting to help save a guest's life. Thank you very much. She was received a Spirit Award, Meritorious City Service Award, External Customer Service Champion Award, and the Outstanding City Service Award from the Westminster Public Safety Recognition Foundation. You have been busy. Lori's been married for 38 years. She enjoys spending time with her 5 grandchildren and enjoys riding her bike on all the great bike trails in Westminster. And as we saw previously, we have a small token of appreciation for you, and you get to choose how you do this. Okay. Congratulations to Lori for 25 years. Mom? There we go. Mr. Dave Horace. She picks on me regularly.
Does she do that? She picks on me regularly.
Yeah, we have more in common than you think we do.
It's my wife Dawn and my oldest daughter Leah.
You get to hold that. No. I get in trouble when I do this, folks, believe me. Dave Horace was hired in 1994 as the chief building official after spending the previous 10 years with the City of Thornton Building Department. During the past 5 years, Dave has been directly involved in the construction of many of the landmark projects in the city, including the Weston, the Promenade, the Globe Building, Walnut Creek, Orchard Town Center, and most recently Westminster Station Transit-Oriented Development and the new downtown project. In addition, Dave was instrumental in the development of information in the city's rental property maintenance code, a program unique to Westminster within the state. Dave is active in the Colorado chapter of the International Code Council, a statewide professional organization for code officials, serving as chapter president in 2004, as well as receiving the chapter's 2 highest awards, the President's Award and the prestigious Beryl Wallace Award. Davis has also served on national committees for the International Code Council. Away from the office, Dave is an avid golfer, which I know he does have sand in his bag. Enjoys enjoys college athletics as well as playing a little volleyball. He loves to travel. Dave and his wife Dawn have lived in the city for 25 years and raised 2 beautiful daughters. Both here, both equal. Dave has been with us for 25 years, and I've had the chance to work very close with Dave during this tenure because we do a lot of conversation back and forth about building codes, Mike Jones and some of the others. We have been down at the state testifying on behalf of the codes that are brought into the city. So we spend a lot of time together working with him and his department, and I truly appreciate this professional in my own area, what the work Dave does for the city and the department that he leads. Dave, I don't know how long you get to keep it. Dawn's already got her eyes on it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Dawn, what do you got? Everybody stay still. Thank you. Congratulations.
Well, can you believe we're at 30 years? And Patty Wright. Is anyone coming with you, Patty? Would anyone like to go with Patty?
Yeah, there's people coming, yeah.
There's somebody coming up.
Would you guys all like to come up for Patty?
After 30 years, she deserves it.
Rich hired me. Well, this isn't my story. Okay, so I was telling some folks that after a couple of months of working with the city, Rich said, "You are not the person we interviewed. I don't know. You are loud. And I don't know. That's not who we thought we were getting."
Very true.
I'm glad you stayed.
Thank you.
For 30 years. So let me give you some information on Patty. So Patty began her Westminster career as a part-time receptionist in the community development, then became a full-time employee. Ms. Finn, thanks to you.
Yes, thanks.
Okay. In public works and utilities before moving to become the administrative secretary in parks, recreation, and libraries. She's been the PRL, Citywide Safety Representative. Patty became the Open Space Volunteer Coordinator in 2000, working with exceptional volunteers in the outdoors. She is proud to work beside volunteers with their generous hearts and helping hands. Volunteers renew your faith in humans. I'm sure that's what you said.
I have said that.
Patty was promoted to Open Space Supervisor in 2016 and works with an amazing team who continue to create, enhance, and inspire. Patty is so excited about the strides made in Open Space Division and believes Open Space sets Westminster apart from other cities in Colorado. And I agree with you. Patty has 2 daughters, Amanda and Kelsey, and 2 grandchildren, Dallin and Zora, all of whom have volunteered for Westminster, so it's a family affair. Wonderful. Patty has made many strong friendships in Westminster. In fact, friends that have stood the test of time, 30 years of living. Patty looks forward to a few more years. What do you mean a few more years?
2.
Can we extend it to 40?
No. I'm way too long in the tooth for that.
Please join me in congratulating Patty Wright. Go.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for hiring me.
Ms. Scully, if you would, please.
I have the great honor of presenting the 40-year award to Mark Schmidt, and his family should join him. All right.
Nice to meet you. I'm Mark. This is my wife, Joni. This is my youngest daughter, Christy, and my oldest daughter, Keely.
Beautiful family.
Thank you.
40 years.
Yes.
That was a long time.
It is a long time to be riding a boat here, but we've been doing good.
I'm very impressed. I'm a little sad that there's not a check for you on here, but there isn't. So
no, they keep paying me. They keep paying me. That's good enough, you know. And I keep coming back to work.
Well, you have a very exciting story, so I'm going to take a few minutes here to read it. So Mark Schmidt started with the city in March 1979 as a firefighter. During his 40 years of service, he has found his niche as a fire engineer for the past 37 years. Mark is currently assigned to Fire Station 5. In his 40 years of service, Mark has seen many changes in the city of Westminster.
Yeah, we'd be here all night.
In 1979, Mark was one of approximately 18 career firefighters when there were 3 fire stations, 2 of which were being staffed by volunteers that responded from home. Today, there are nearly 140 career fire staff and 6 fire stations utilizing the latest in firefighting technology. Mark has served on the fire department's fitness committee since its inception in the early 1990s. While attending a firefighter fitness conference in 1993, Mark learned about the Firefighter Combat Challenge. This worldwide competition evaluating firefighter abilities by means of an intense obstacle course became one of Mark's passions. Mark put together a team from Westminster Fire that competed in an event that was televised on ESPN. The Westminster team placed second in the worldwide competition and brought national recognition to Westminster. In addition, Mark has served on countless committees, projects, and special teams throughout his tenure. One of those was 17 years on the dive team. Mark currently serves on the wildland team, where he has been deployed to high-profile events such as the Hyde Park Fire, Black Forest Fire, and the 419 fire in Durango last summer. Mark teaches fire apparatus operations, driving and pumping classes, and is the recipient of the department's prestigious Distinguished Service Cross for disarming a combative patient with a butcher knife. Mark currently lives in Coal Creek Canyon in a log home that he personally built. He and his wife, Joni, have 2 daughters, Keely and Christy. Mark enjoys camping, hiking, riding motorcycles, skiing, and with his daughters, and an array of sports. I know you enjoy your daughters too, but I acknowledge that you like to ski with them. Did you do that ski? I'm with you. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Mark. Really,
Thank you.
from the bottom of our hearts.
All right. Thank you. That's very well spoken.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, let me congratulate all of the members of the city staff for the number of years of service, but also to thank the families. And this is your opportunity to escape before we start the business.
They're out of here.
Okay, the next item on our agenda tonight is the part we call citizen communication. This is a period of time of up to 5 minutes that we allow people to come forward to the podium, identify yourself by name and address if you did not sign up, and then you have a period of up to 5 minutes. Your 5 minutes starts when the green light comes on. When you have 1 minute left, the yellow one will come on, and when your time is up, the red one will come on. This is, again, a period where we listen to you. This is not a back and forth conversation or a debate, but we're here to listen to you during that period of time. As of right now, I have no one that has signed up to talk, but if there's anyone in the audience that still would like to come forward at this time, please do so. Okay. Next item on the agenda is a report of city officials. Mr. Tripp.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. Just a couple of comments. First of all, to recognize most of those folks that are outside the room now, but just to make a point of all those employees that are here this evening. I thank you, council, for recognizing our staff on a regular basis. It's the foundation of the great work the city has done for over 50 years. A very, very high quality staff that once they get here, they don't leave, as you saw in evidence with Mark's 40-year tenure as a firefighter here. So we're very proud to work with all those folks. Just a couple of updates on items. I'd heard this afternoon that barricades are going in place for another development that's beginning in our downtown project. Downtown Westminster has a project that's just north of the plaza, northwest of JCPenney, called Aspire. It's a multi-level mixed-use development, and it's a major development on our campus, and that has started today. So we're really happy to report that we closed on the land sale of that just a couple of weeks ago. We this past weekend had a retreat with you counselors, and I want to thank you for that. Some of you may mention that, so I won't take your steam away, but I wanted to tell you that in conjunction with that, this Wednesday and Thursday, your executive leadership team will be doing a retreat. It'll be right here in Westminster, so we'll be accessible should you need something during that time, but our phones will probably be off during part of the time, and we'll have acting folks in our capacities, which I'll let you know about that. We're going to get together and just talk about the future of the city. One of the great things this city has done historically is strategic planning, and our efforts this last weekend and this week revolve around all of us getting better at working together and thinking towards the future and continuing to be ahead of the game, so to speak. You have a report that was provided to you in the study session room from your municipal judge on the annual report of her court. Tiffany will be in front of you next week. She wanted you to have that tonight. She does ask that you take a look at it before next week and bring it back with you next week. For those in the audience, the council has 3 appointees, myself as the city manager and the city attorney and the municipal judge, and she'll be making her annual report to you next week. An update to you that I wanted to say as a part of the meeting, because I want to make sure people are aware of this. Rick Doucette of the Community Reach program here in Westminster stepped into a difficult situation a couple of years ago when the Arapahoe House operated detox center in our greater communities, really between multiple jurisdictions, closed. The Arapahoe House was not able to provide that facility. The detox center is an important facility and program for our police department, for our community in general. It provides an opportunity or place to put those that are under the influence and intoxicated overnight and keep them out of our jails. I won't go any further in terms of description of that, but just to tell you it saves jail space, and it's really a resource that's important to all of us. That facility was going to close. Rick Doucette, on behalf of Community Reach, stepped in and found a location that actually took over, I think, the existing location in Commerce City at that time. They've since determined that building to not be suitable moving forward. They're looking for a permanent location. I'll get to that in a second, but I want to let you know and let the community know that on a temporary basis, they're intending to locate that Community Reach facility, that detox center, at the old St. Anthony's campus at 84th east of Federal. So that is happening in our community. We thought you should know about that. There will be some calls for service likely associated with that, but also it's all in a location that'll result in less transport time for our police. So we're evaluating that and what we believe to be the impacts of that, and I'm sure the chief can provide more information later should you need more information. But at the end of the road here, Community Reach hopes to build a facility someplace in and around the Adams County area. I don't know what that location is. I've reached out to my counterpart in Adams County, Ray Gonzalez, because I've been told that they're working in conjunction with Community Reach to find a location for that facility. Ray has not been able to report what that is to me. I'll keep you posted. I've asked him to make sure and keep us familiar with that, but because I knew this might be an item of interest for your citizens, I thought I should share it with you this evening, and I wanted to make sure the community knew about it also. The last thing that I have is a drought management update, and our Public Works Director, I think wisely, has asked me occasionally to talk about drought management. And part of the reason is that we take for granted sometimes that we have enough water, and we don't necessarily. It really depends on the annual snowfall we get. So it's important to keep an eye on this. We are currently working on a drought management plan, which gives all of us a better mechanism to manage the varying degrees of drought we may end up with or unavailability of water in a given year. It allows us to ensure preparedness for any of these near-term events. This update of the drought management plan will be coming to you in about the next 45 days or so. I want to let you know that. Right now, Public Works Director Kirschbaum reports that reservoir storage is currently lower than our 10-year average, which means we need a solid snowpack this winter to meet our spring reservation fill goals. We've had about average to above average snowfall to this point. We're predicting some heavy snows here in the next week or so. So when we're inconvenienced with snow getting to and from work and in our daily lives, keep in mind that that's a gift to us, bringing additional reservoir water into Stanley Lake. Snowpack at that point, when this was written in late February, was slightly above average for Clear Creek. And at that point, they were just about over halfway through the season. So we're going to mention these things from time to time because I think sometimes the community maybe takes for granted, what we don't take for granted, and that is watching what kind of snowfall we get in the mountains and how that impacts our availability for water through Stanley Lake. That's all that I have for today. Thanks for the time, and again, thanks for your time giving us your full Saturday away from your families to long-range plan for the city.
Thank you, Doug. Council, any comments of any of it? Ms. Scully?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to take a moment to once again recognize the great employees of our city. Not only did we have significant anniversaries that we got to celebrate tonight, but last Thursday night we said goodbye to one of our members here from the city as well in a retirement party, Mr. Joe Reed, and he'll be dearly missed. And people they touch us here in our city, and everybody contributes in a very positive way. And as a resident and as a city councilor, I just hope that all the staff really knows that, because it's very, very impressive, always. So wanted to make that mention. And last night, several of us had the privilege of supporting the Ralston House in an event last night, and wanted to just bring that to light. We are very fortunate here in Westminster to be able to have the Ralston House right here in our own community. They do great work and great service to our community, and we're very fortunate. So I just wanted to bring that also to light.
Any other comments from council? Amy?
I was just adding up the number of years that we're celebrating tonight, about 170 years of service to the city of Westminster, and that's huge. So congratulations to all the families and those of you who chose to hire these individuals. Good job. Good job.
Other comments from council? Well, following up on what some of the council members said about the tenure of some of our employees, sitting in the back row over here on my left side, right about the middle of the row, is one of the longest tenured employees we have in the city, and could, if he behaves himself, be the first recipient of a 50-year pin in the city. And he's not that far from it. Right, Dave? Good. And we have never done a check for 50 years. So I'm excited if he gets it done before my term's up. We'll have to talk to Tammy to make sure we can afford to pay that check. One of the things that we get questioned about once in a while, you see those of us sitting here at the dais, we're looking down watching something. So what you're seeing us, these are our packets that we're watching on an iPad as we go through the different items. These are not meant for communication to the audience, to those not here, and we have an agreement amongst the council and as part of our protocol that we don't text, we don't respond to emails, we don't get on social media while we're either here at a council meeting, in the pre-meeting, or in the study sessions or executive session. So apologize that we may have our heads down at times, but we are looking at what's being discussed at that particular time. So if we have questions, when that opportunity comes up, people have a chance to see it, or they get to talk about it if they have questions from the council. So it's not that we're ignoring anyone. We are definitely listening, especially if you're here talking about something that's coming up. The only other item I had is that we did have scheduled a post-meeting item that was open to the public, but because of the council member who asked specifically for that discussion is not here tonight, we're going to postpone that, so there will be no post-meeting item for tonight. So once we get done with all the business, you actually get to go home for a change. But don't make it a habit. Got a lot of work to do. So the next item up that we have is the consent agenda. This is an item that we bring forward where these are routine matters that they've been reviewed by council, or they maybe have already had a reading that no council member objected to. So the items that we have, there's been no request for any item to be removed. So at this time, I would entertain a motion for the consent agenda, and I'll turn to Ms. Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the City Council adopt the consent agenda, items 8A through C.
Mr. Vols?
I second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. If you would, please turn to your lights and your buttons on your device. And the motion carries on a 5-0 vote. So thank you very much for that. Next item up is the public hearings. The first item up is item 10A. Ms. Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to pass Councilor's Bill number 5 on the first reading, authorizing the city manager to execute a development assistance agreement with Westminster Peak LLC in substantially the same form as presented to council for the development of Block B4 in downtown Westminster.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Vols, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion by council on item 10A, Council's Bill number 5? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote. Ms. Parker, if you would, please.
Atchison.
Yes.
Haney.
Yes.
Mankey.
Yes.
Scully.
Yes.
Vols.
Yes.
Okay, I have someone that needs to hit their button. Okay, now we have. Okay. Thank you very much. Motion passes on a 5-0 vote. Next item on the agenda is Council's Bill number 6, and this is also a roll call vote on item 10A. Ms. Mankey?
10B, correct?
10B, yes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to pass Councilor's Bill number 6, removing the 12-month moratorium on the acceptance of new development applications for projects that increase sewer demand in the Big Dry Creek Interceptor Sewer System imposed by Ordinance Number 3940, Series 2018, as amended by Ordinance Number 3967, Series 2018.
Ms. Scully?
Yes.
Do you have a second?
Oh, that too. Second.
Okay.
Sorry, I got excited.
At this point, we want to make sure we pass on some information that also to the public. So normally we would not have a presentation on these, but we think this is an important enough item to ask staff to come prepared to give us an update. So, Mr. Andrews, if you and Mr. Kirschbaum like to lead us on.
Just as our Director of Public Works and Utilities, Mr. Kirschbaum, gets set up, just a brief introduction. This is a very important step in the process of removing the moratorium that was in place in effectively the top or upper 2/3 of the city. Mr. Kirschbaum is going to give us a brief presentation on starting at the implementation of the moratorium and working through what was done in order for us to be able to recommend to City Council tonight the early removal of the moratorium by almost as much as 3 months ahead of the projected end date of that moratorium. Max, are you ready?
Mr. Kirschbaum, if you would, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. A week ago, the core team who did the majority of the work over the last 7-8 months on this effort gave you a more detailed presentation on the basis of the moratorium and ultimately the work that was done and the recommendation that we will repeat again tonight. Tonight I'm going to give you just a shorter version of that presentation, and I'm going to start with a first slide with the wording of the recommendation that is before you this evening. The effective date for the removal of this development application moratorium, our recommendation is based on April 29th, which is the completion of a significant amount of physical work that I'll describe in this presentation, as well as the completion of the pre-design study. This slide lists a few of the primary reasons why we came to you to enact the moratorium back in July. I'll summarize it just by saying that Public Works and Utilities, along with our interdepartmental partners, we have a very strong responsibility to the citizens and to you as the elected officials for the public health and safety of our water and sanitary sewer systems that serve our citizens. We had a significant concern about that based on actual flows that we saw in this interceptor sewer, as well as what the models that we were using were telling us was shortly before us. So based on those two together, we came to you and you did enact the moratorium. So if I could back up for just a minute for those who might not be familiar, the Big Dry Creek Interceptor Sewer serves roughly the 70% of our city by land area. And if you look at the map that is on the screen, it's roughly the area north of 92nd Avenue. It's shown here in green. It does not include a portion that would be north of the wastewater treatment plant, which is shown as a small green rectangle in the upper right. Flows north of the plant actually are not part of this interceptor sewer. Now, to be a little bit more specific, it consists of 22 miles of pipe. The interceptor is the pipe we classify between 15 inches in diameter and 54 inches in diameter. Within the tributaries and the main reach that you see shown here, there are over 530 manholes, which, if you just kind of park that in your mind for a second, it'll become important in terms of some survey work that we did as part of the effort. Another part that I would like to point out specifically, and I'll come back to this again, but just keep in mind this yellow box that extends from about 110th and Sheridan all the way up to 128th, just to the west of Huron. This is an area in which there is a set of parallel pipes, an older set which is a constant 30-inch diameter, as well as a series of pipe that ranges from the small to the large as it goes downstream toward the wastewater treatment plant. So of all what you saw last week, I'd like to just kind of summarize it as this. We made various commitments to you when we came to you in July and you enacted the moratorium. The first of those is the main bullet there, that we would immediately begin a pre-design effort and study by contract with a great consulting partner that we have a long-term relationship with. That's HDR Engineering. That study contract will wrap up with a published report by the end of April. It included a detailed field survey of that entire system that I showed you on the previous maps. This was very significant because we actually found there were a lot of corrections needed in the survey data that we had historically, and that's what feeds into the hydraulic models that we use for all of the projections for current and future development. We were specifically interested in peak flows because especially sewer pipes, we don't care about average flow. We have to be able to carry the most peak flow in the wettest time of the year. We also, as a part of this study, evaluated the condition of all the pipes in the system. We identified some project areas for specific improvements. I'll show that on a slide coming up. And we looked at the effect of growth on all areas and all components of the utility, not just this interceptor sewer, but all of the wastewater system and all of the water system, because all infrastructure has certain limitations, and it's relevant to this comprehensive planning that we do with capital investment planning. Secondly, we have awarded and we are in progress with a $3.4 million construction project to rehabilitate about 20,000 feet of that total interceptor sewer. This is the area that I showed you in the previous slide that was highlighted with the yellow rectangle. That is about the 20,000 feet that's being addressed as part of this contract. It is primarily condition related. This parallel sewer has not effectively been in full use for nearly 20 years. The work that we're doing now will allow us to fully utilize the capacity of that parallel pipe. We also determined that back in October time frame that all of the development applications that met the criteria that were spelled out in the moratorium could in fact move forward, and with our partners in community development and economic development notified by those owners and developers in October that would be the case, that would give them a bit of assurance that they could continue to move forward with their projects. And finally, we came to you in January and you approved a modification to that moratorium that allowed a category of 4 developments to also proceed forward, as at that time we had enough confidence in where we were with the study data that could reasonably happen, and it was within the capacity of the sewer as it is. This slide merely shows a little bit of the effort that we undertook. You'll notice that the interceptor itself is color coded. We also then color coded specific parcels that are either undeveloped or underdeveloped that were a significant part of the work that went into this, looking toward growth, the comprehensive plan that will be presented to you sometime within the next year, as well as a look toward the final build out of our city. And you see that it was actually a parcel by parcel review that went into the study that got us to the point where we have the confidence to say what we've recommended to you this evening is in fact the right action. I mentioned the project areas. There is money to be spent. There is work to be done still in front of us. Specifically, as we put together the 2019 and 2020 budget that you approved last fall, we moved a significant amount of money, roughly $34 million, that we had set aside out in 2023-2024 timeframe that would have done this work. With your approval of the budget, that money was moved forward into 2019, and it is available for us to do the work that you see identified by these ovals that represent about 11 different project areas. The ones that are highlighted in blue are those that do have not only condition-related issues to deal with, but they have capacity issues to deal with for our future. The couple of circles that are highlighted in a purple color are those that merely need a condition-related improvement. So if you look at the area identified as PA1 on there, this is the area that's roughly from the Butterfly Pavilion going north to a diversion structure at about 110th and Sheridan. That is probably the most critical of all of the 22 miles of pipe that we need to address in these future projects that are coming. It is the most constricted area in terms of capacity, and it will be addressed early on in the work that we will now begin the design effort for. And the project, the follow-on project to the pre-design work that we're completing will be the design phase of this work. At this time, we do feel, if you look at the note I have here underneath the recommendation, we believe that the original estimate of some $35 million, which includes some monies that were 2018 and prior that we have already spent, is adequate, and that the completion of all of the work by the year 2022 remains viable. Those were the same numbers for dollars and time that we presented at the beginning of this period. We still feel that is now doable, and the work that we've done and laid out in those various project areas will be executed over the next 3+ years. So at this time, I'll just come back to the recommendation and say that based on the sum of all of this work done by the interdepartmental team, we would recommend that you remove the development application moratorium effective April 29th.
Mr. Andrews, you have anything to add? Tripp? No, sir. We have a motion and a second. I'll see if there are any comments at this time from council. Ms. Cully?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Max, and to your team, thank you. This is tremendous work. And as, well, I guess there were only two of us on that council that here tonight that had to vote the moratorium into effect. That was a very hard decision. It's always very nerve-wracking when you know that you have to take a pause and you don't know what's going to happen. But Max, you presented all the facts. You made our job not easy, but it was a simple decision. We had to do what was right for the public safety. And I remember Councilor Byrd saying we are not going to kick this can down the road. We are going to take ownership of this and we will fix this now. And then once we get it fixed, we'll be able to proceed. And I really took those words to heart, and I'm just so relieved that you did a fantastic job. You did exactly what we needed you to do. Thank you. Our city is grateful to you.
Just to add, as Councilor Scully was talking about, one of the things that was brought to us is what's going to happen in the future? How big is this problem, which is what we didn't know. And uncovering this, even though we had some historical data of what pipes were put where, we really didn't understand what the key problems were. And I think what Max and economic development and community development did to work is to find out what is really the problem we've got. How much can we really take on? This sets the future for the city of Westminster. And understanding how our core systems work and how we can get services to them. So the work that was led by Public Works and all the departments that were involved here in the city, we had a task force team that led this. We talked extensively with them the last couple of weeks. This is the right decision. This is the right time. We still have huge numbers of applications coming into the city for future developments, and we needed to be able to tell those investors, you can come forward. You can invest in the city and in our future. So this really helps us get to that decision point. So as Catherine said, we really appreciate the work the staff did, HDR. We appreciate their work as well. But this is a question that's been looming for several months. In some cases, been reluctant to make decisions because we didn't know what the final results was. The fact that we've got such an easy thing to fix in the overall scheme of things, this could have been hundreds of millions of dollars. I think we're very fortunate that the system was as sustainable as it was. We can do some repairs, some capacity issues, but what we can do is 3 years worth of work versus 10 or 15 years. And having to piece and parcel this out to the point where we would still have to hold back developers and investors in the city. Once you lose those opportunities, you don't get them back very often. Experts that came and met with the council last week to again tell us that this was the recommendation they have, and based upon their expertise, I think the council is very comfortable moving forward with this. We'll find out in just about a minute and a half. Yes, sir.
Could I just add one thank you? You saw the details last week. There was a core team of about 15 people who really put all the effort into this, but I would specifically like to thank Kent Brugler, Dave Lozman, John Burke, and Kristen Decker for being, I think, the key four who really pushed this with our consultant HDR continuously from July till now.
Thanks, man. There are no other comments from council. This was also a roll call vote. If you would, Ms. Parker.
Haney.
Yes.
Mankey.
Yes.
Scully. Yes. Foles.
Yes.
Atchison.
Yes. I'm still looking for another button. There we go. All right, the motion passes on a 5-0 vote. We thank the council, the staff, Max. Again, pass on to the group that it was a job well done, and we appreciate the work they did. Don, thank you for your leadership, along with our deputies, putting this team together. And we'll be very glad when we can say we're all done. Just a few more weeks. Next item on the agenda is moving on to item 10C1. This is Council's Bill number 7. Council, your order. Ms. Haney?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I move to pass Councilor's Bill number 7 on first reading, appropriating 2018 Park Open Space and Trails Fund carryover in the amount of $643,000 and a transfer of these funds in the General Capital Improvement Fund to provide supplemental funding for the purchase of open space.
Ms. Mankey.
I second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. Is any discussion by council? Seeing none. Ms. Parker?
Mankey. Scully. Yes. Bowles.
Yes.
Atchison.
Yes.
Haney.
Yes.
And this one also carries on a 5-0 vote. Thank you very much. Next item up, Ms. Haney, if you would continue with item C2.
Yes, sir. Be glad to. I move to adopt resolution number 7, approving the expenditure of funds to share in the cost of purchasing property with Jefferson County from Woman Creek Reservoir Authority for the purpose of trails and open space.
Ms. Mankey?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this item from council? Seeing none, this is also a roll call vote. Ms. Parker, if you would, please.
Scully. Yes. Bowles.
Yes.
Atchison.
Yes.
Haney.
Yes.
Mankey.
Yes.
This motion also carries on a 5-0 vote. Next item on the agenda is item D1, number 10. This is Council's Bill number 8. Ms. Scully?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to pass Councilor's Bill number 8 on the first reading in order to amend the Westminster Municipal Code to provide for the new nuisance enforcement against properties that create a public nuisance through criminal activity.
Mr. Voles?
I second the motion.
Any comments or questions from council in regards to this one? For those of who may be in the audience interested in some of the things that we've had a number of areas of the city that have brought us about. We've had some public testimony from certain groups, but those groups that have been here publicly over the last few weeks, this is not the only area. But we have spent a lot of time. We've worked with some of our citizen groups. I'd like to specifically thank the city attorney's office and the PD for the work they've done to find and craft an ordinance that we believe will give us a tool, not the only tool. And with this, we don't resolve history. We have a starting place. But Mr. Frankel can tell you, and I'll ask him if you will, this now gives us a new piece that we've not had before to try to address these areas. Unfortunately, it's not going to be that we can go back in history because the ordinance is only being potentially adopted tonight and will require a second reading further on this month. But we now have something that the police and city attorney's office and the prosecutors have not had to use in their items of work every day. So we appreciate all the work they've done. Our prosecuting department has also been very instrumental in saying these are the things I need to see in this ordinance for me able to be prosecuting the case and to build evidence. So we thank the groups that have been working on it. Mr. Frankel, any comments I can turn to you for?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd say that I'm in agreement. This would be a tool for law enforcement to utilize, and I'm grateful for Mr. Fusilier's assistance in development of the proposed ordinance for your consideration, and he's present this evening, as well as Mr. Hoff and Mr. Munch in our office as well, who are not present this evening, but definitely played a role, and their contribution is very much appreciated.
Any other comments from council? Ms. Parker, we're back to you with a roll call vote, please.
Voles.
Yes.
Atchison.
Yes.
Haney.
Yes.
Mankey.
Yes.
Scully. Yes.
And the motion is passed on a 5-0 vote. Ms. Scully, would you take D2, please?
Yes, sir. I move to pass Councilor's Bill number 9 on first reading in order to amend the Westminster Municipal Code to clarify and update the definition of domestic violence to mirror the state definition.
Mr. Bowles?
I second the motion.
Any comments or questions on this item? Ms. Mankey? None? Okay. Ms. Haney, did you have a comment?
No, thank you.
Being no comments, Ms. Parker, we're back to you on item D2.
Atchison.
Yes.
Haney.
Yes.
Mankey.
Yes.
Scully. Yes. Voles.
Yes.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This is now moving us to item D3. Passing before us tonight is Councilor's Bill number 10. And Ms. Scully, you're up.
I move to pass Councilor's Bill number 10 on first reading in order to amend the Westminster Municipal Code to update the definitions of tobacco to include vaping devices for purposes of restrictions on indoor tobacco use.
Mr. Vold.
I second the motion.
Sir, I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this item by council? Seeing none, this is also a roll call vote, if you would please.
Haney.
Yes.
Mankey.
Yes.
Scully. Yes. Bowles.
Yes.
Atchison.
Yes. Motion passes on a 5-0 vote. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is Councilor's Bill number 11. Ms. Scully, you're up again.
I move to pass Councilor's Bill number 11 on first reading in order to amend the Westminster Municipal Code to update the definitions of tobacco to include vaping devices for purposes of restrictions on selling tobacco to minors, to impose a requirement to verify the age of tobacco purchasers prior to the sale of tobacco, and to increase the maximum fine for selling tobacco to minors.
Mr. Vold.
I second the motion.
Thank you, sir. I have a motion and a second. Is there any comments or questions from council? Seeing none, this is also a roll call vote, if you would.
Yes.
Scully. Yes. Bowles.
Yes.
Atchison.
Yes.
Haney.
Yes.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This is also the last of our roll call votes for a few minutes. Moving to item 10E. This is a recommendation from the city's manager's office on contract negotiations. Ms. Mankey?
I move, yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I move, based on the recommendation of the city manager, to find that the public interest is best served by authorizing a negotiated purchase from the sole source provider, National Meter and Automation, Inc., for annual water meter replacement, transponders, chambers, and other miscellaneous meter parts in an amount not to exceed $200,000 for calendar year 2019.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, got Ms. Scully. Thank you, Ms. Payne. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion like this from council? Seeing none, ladies and gentlemen, this is just a vote with your buttons. Motion carries on a 5-0 vote. Next item on the agenda is moving to item 10F. Ms. Haney?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to authorize a waiver of the city code requirement for underground relocations of certain existing overhead utility lines along the western property line and along portions of the southern and northern property lines of the Alpine Vista Townhomes development located at the northwest corner of West 88th Avenue and Lowell Boulevard.
Mr. Vold.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion by council on this item? Seeing none, again, ladies and gentlemen, this is a vote with your lights, please. 5-0 vote. Next item up is item 10G. Again, this is public interest negotiating for a sole source contract in the city manager's office. Council, I need a motion. Ms. Scully?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move, based on the recommendation of the city manager, to determine that the public interest would best be served by negotiating a sole source contract with Stantec Consulting Services, Inc. for the collection of pavement management data in an amount not to exceed $156,550 in 2019 and in an amount not to exceed $65,000 in 2020.
Ms. Mankey?
I second the motion.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on item 10G by the council? Seeing none, ladies and gentlemen, this is a vote with your light, please. I have a 5-0 vote. Next item is item 10H. Ms. Mankey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to authorize, I move, based on the recommendation of the city manager, to determine that the public interest would best be served by negotiating a sole, we just did that. Sorry. It is H, right?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I was right the first time. I move to authorize the city manager to sign the Fourth Amendment to the intergovernmental agreement with the Urban Drainage and Flood Control District for the South and Middle Highlands Creek Drainage and Flood Control Project improvements and authorize an additional contribution of $150,000 for the final design and construction of this project.
Ms. Cully.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion by council? Just so that people are aware, in the election that we had this last year, Urban Drainage and Flood Control District brought forth a ballot issue, 7G, as I recall the number, or a debrucing measure. But the fact that the district was able to debruce added about $14 million more that they could use for flood control, safety, and control of areas, up to including reducing the size of some floodplain areas. And Westminster is a part of that organization, therefore this grant comes to us through them. But also in the 2020 budget, we expect to almost double the amount of money available to the district to do more of these open space, trails, flood mitigation, and risk reduction here in the 7-county metro area. So we appreciate very much the work that they're doing and the money they return to the local communities through this ballot initiative. So we greatly appreciate that. And it also helps our internal citizens as well as we get more open space taken care of. We have a better control of the flooding that potentially could happen in a lot of our contributaries by this work that goes on, and they're much more useful as open space opportunities for us in the future. So we appreciate what the Urban Drainage Group does, and I'm very proud to serve as the rep for the city of Westminster on that board. So we have a motion and a second. Again, this will be a vote with your lights, please. And the motion carries on a 5-0 vote. Next item is item 10I. Again, a recommendation from the city manager's office. And Ms. Scully, if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move, based on the recommendation of the city manager, to find that the public interest will be best served by entering into a sole source contract amendment with Mueller Engineering Company for design and construction inspection services for the Irving Street connection to Creekside Drive and Little Dry Creek Drainage and Flood Control Project in the amount of $73,922 for the total authorized expenditure with this firm not to exceed $208,256, which includes a previously approved $6,500 contingency.
Mr. Bowles?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I second the motion.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any comments or questions from council in regards to item 10I? Seeing none, if you would, please. And this one's expiring on a 5-0 vote. Ladies and gentlemen, I hate to ruin your night, but you're done. Appreciate it. And again, the post meeting has been postponed till all council members are back. There are no executive sessions tonight, and we thank you very much, and you get to go home. So enjoy an evening at home that you weren't expecting. Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, we thank you very much for coming tonight, and hope you have a safe journey home.
I know.